Oh, Brian just left the building. It's okay. All right, so it is 5:31, and we are going to start the meeting. Welcome to the Keene School Board Education Committee meeting of May 13th. This is my first meeting chairing, so please bear with me as I learn my way around this role. But we will start the meeting now, and we will approve the minutes, and then we'll open the floor for public input. So if we can have a motion to approve the minutes of April 15th.
So moved.
Second. Okay, were there any issues? No? Okay, no discussion? All right. All in favor of approving the minutes? 3. Any not in favor? No? Okay, good. That was easy. I will now open the floor to public input. Is there anyone here who would like to provide public input this evening? All right, not yet. That will stay open for 30 minutes. So if anyone comes in or decides that they do want to comment, please just raise your hand and we'll recognize you. All right, next on the agenda is Kate Adams, the Student Services Report.
Good evening. And Ben, do you want me to wait? I'll give him a minute to pull that up. Great, thank you. So I wanted to start off, as I do each month, with some celebrations and would like to acknowledge and celebrate our school principals for National School Principals Day, Teacher Appreciation Week, and School Nurse Day. Would like to, on behalf of the Student Services Department, thank all of those individuals for the role they play in facilitating collaboration and advocating for necessary resources. Let's see. Thank you, Vanna. All right, so some department highlights. The first is our English language learners. This week, our ELL teachers are meeting to review updated access assessment scores. That's our annual assessment that we provide or administer to students receiving ELL services to measure their language proficiency. They will also be unpacking the new curriculum that we've ordered for our English language learners team that will be rolled out for the 25-26 school year starting in September, kindergarten through 12th grade. They will be reviewing this performance data and aligning it to ensure alignment with best practices. And Samantha Sindros, our ELL coordinator, has volunteered, if Jen, you're agreeable, and the Ed Committee, she'd like to come to our next Ed Committee to provide an overview of student growth and highlights from the school year for our June meeting. The graph below shows our the number of students receiving ELL services in the Keene School District from the beginning of this school year. You'll see that there has been an increase in students who have been found eligible. And traditionally, there is a dip in those numbers throughout the summer months, but we don't anticipate that we will be back below 50 as we have been in previous years. Special education is our next highlight, and I'd like again to thank Dr. White for collaborating with our special education team to allow us to revamp our ESY model for our elementary students to provide them with some opportunities for transference of skills and the ability to interact with peer models and participate in Camp KSD. ESY, or Extended School Year, is designed to reduce regression, and this opportunity is going to provide a unique and engaging environment for students to be able to practice those skills naturally while fostering social interaction. So thank you, Dr. White, for having an open mind, and I look forward to reporting out on the success of this model at the end of this summer. 2 new special education teachers will attend the Summer New Teacher Summit hosted by the New Hampshire Association of Special Education Administrators. This training is going to provide an opportunity to help them stay current on best practices, understand their roles, and network throughout the state. So, yep.
So when you say new special ed teachers, will they be starting in the fall, or are they currently teaching? Are they new teachers?
They're new to the profession starting July 1.
Starting July 1?
Yep.
Okay, so brand new.
Brand new. And we'd like to send more teachers, but we only are allowed 2 slots per district throughout the state.
Oh.
So it's first come, first serve. Throughout the summer, some of our occupational therapists are developing an intervention and goal bank, while our EPIC teachers, that's our self-contained program at Fuller, are working to develop some specialized curriculum to promote community access. Our charter and private school case manager is completing meaningful consultations with our key nonprofit private schools. IDEA, which is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, requires us to spend a proportionate share of our grant funds to provide equitable services for children with disabilities in a parentally placed educational setting. And part of that process is to hold consultation meetings to ensure that families can provide input on how these funds are allocated. So those meetings will be taking place this month. The Keene School District anticipates that it will successfully spend down its 23-24 grant to less than $50. The original allocation, just to note, was over $800,000. So we are working very hard to spend every penny of grant money that is allocated each year. We will not know until probably late June what we're going to receive for the 25-26 school year. But we are working hard with the business office to make sure that we don't return any of that grant money. Medicaid reimbursement to date, I just want to highlight that we have received $129,577.71, which is a 92% increase from last year. So I believe it was September, October, I presented about the changes we've made to the structure, our internal structure and the professional development we've offered to our teachers and related service providers, and we are certainly seeing the benefits of that. It is important to note that last year we billed $216,266.07, and to date we have already billed $502,548.10. So again, it's just another data point that the systems we've put in place, we are equating to more dollars being reimbursed to the Keene School District. The New Hampshire Department of Ed is collecting data for Indicator 8, which measures feedback from parents and guardians who are able to share their experiences with special education. This survey is open through May 23rd. We encourage all families to participate. The survey QR code is linked to our Facebook page, our website, and families should have received an email. If you have not, please contact your school or reach out to the Student Services Department. This information is really important because the state uses this to look at trends and identify areas of improvement. Okay, next page. I've included our May case management numbers. You'll see Franklin, Wheelock, Simons, and Fuller on the left-hand side of that graph. Keene Middle School and Keene High School are also included.
Okay, I'm sorry, can you explain what we're looking at here?
Yep, so these are the average Learning Center caseload numbers per building as of May 1st.
Okay, so per building, per
person.
Educator?
Per special education teacher who is assigned to the Learning Center. So it does not include self-contained programs, our collaborative programs.
Right,
And
right.
it does not include speech-language pathologists who are case managing speech-only services.
Okay.
So number of students, well, that would be Learning Center, divided by the number of case managers.
Okay. Um,
So you'll see Simons, on average, there are 2 case managers, on average have 20.5 students they are case managing. Whereas Wheelock, I believe it's 11.3 on average.
Okay, and then Franklin is the one building with the extra.
They have a reduction of to 2 staff members next year.
Next year.
Yep.
Okay. So a question, the 2 new special educators who will be starting July 1st, are they replacing, retiring, or leaving special educators? Or are they,
Yes, one will be in a self-contained program,
okay,
and the other is replacing some of it. They're filling a vacancy, so it's not a new position.
but it wasn't filled before?
It's currently
been
vacant right now.
Currently vacant?
Yep.
Okay. All right, that's helpful. And our maximum number,
I think our target range was 15 to 22.
15 to 22, so Simons is really just right under that.
Yep.
And do they anticipate having more next year?
So each one of these schools, what this graph does not represent are the number of 5th graders who will be exiting and transitioning to the middle school,
Okay.
or the middle school students transitioning to the high school, and the high school students who are graduating or exiting with a certificate of attendance. So we not only monitor our current caseloads, but also what we're anticipating once we get through kindergarten registration and have a better sense of who might be, how our students might impact these numbers in any way. So we're monitoring both what we project and what our current caseloads are.
Okay. Please.
The range you mentioned, 15 to 22. You mentioned there's a range, 15 to 22 cases per teacher. That seems like a lot. But I guess since Simons is bumping right up against the 20, is there talk about adding a teacher to Simons?
Not right now. It's not anticipated to exceed that target range that was set by the board last year.
Okay. Quick question. It's come to my understanding that I guess there was a workload study done maybe 10 years ago by Boothby Therapy Services. Are you familiar with it?
Yes, I am. I believe that was, it might have gone all the way back to 2006.
Yeah, I think
Yep.
it's pretty old.
Yep.
But I think if you're able to find it, or you maybe
I do
have
have
it,
a copy.
could you share it with the board? I think it might help us understand like some of the criteria that one looks at when looking at workload versus
Absolutely.
caseload.
I'd be happy to share that.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
You're welcome. I would like to add, Paige, just to respond to your first question. We are continuously monitoring these case numbers. And last summer, the numbers were anticipated to exceed that target range at Franklin. And so we did monitor that act, and that is why we added the 3rd case manager back in. So we are doing the same process as we did last year, and we'll continue to monitor those numbers after kindergarten registration.
Okay.
Yep.
And I do understand that we're doing caseload right now, but I'm just trying, do you have an idea of, for Simons anyway, versus the others that have the lower numbers? I'm having trouble getting past the whole workload thing, like how much more work are these teachers have? It looks like they have double the work than some of the other schools. But maybe that's not the case. I don't know. Do you have a sense of that?
So I think that it's really difficult to quantify workload right now based on, just looking at the 20.5 students. I think part of what we do as a regular exercise with the special education administrator and the building principal is to look at equity and to look at, do all of those 20.5 students have an evaluation that's due this year? So we're required at minimum of every 3 years to do an evaluation, and a component of that is an academic evaluation. So some of those students may not have that component this given year. If they all had that, then we would be looking at how can we ensure that teachers are provided with the resources and the time and the support to be able to meet those needs. So you could have Wheelock, and every one of those 11 students has an academic evaluation this year, whereas none of them have them at Simons, or vice versa. So that's continuously being monitored to make sure that we're providing equity.
Also the range of services in service chart.
Mike.
Thank you, George. We also have to look, I mean, when you see 20 on a caseload of one and 12 on a case of another, that 12 may actually be doing double the work because of the needs of the student and their range of services. So you can't look at it student to student. You really have to dig into the IEP, look at the service chart, and figure out how many units the student's receiving in certain areas relative to their disability. And then from there, they're able to figure out, do I need an extra? Can we bump somebody from this school to support the needs of the students in another school? I think it's a little bit more complex than just the number of students on someone's caseload.
Yeah, and like that to me seems like the whole idea of workload versus caseload, that each kid does have unique needs. So saying, 15 to 22 students, whatever that range is, without looking at the needs of the individual students, I think, again, we keep coming back to this, how can we perhaps incorporate more workload versus just 15 to 22 students per special educator? I think I'm still unclear on how that whole process works.
Sure.
I'm not going to camera myself. So I think that's a great question, but what that's asking is to look at our entire special ed delivery model. It's not as easy as looking at just the workload. You need to look at what are the responsibilities of those case managers, because in other districts where it's a workload model, they are more heavily included as part of the response team for behavioral incidences. So they're a trusted adult, they know the child very well, and so they're usually freed up more so that they can be a response person more frequently as part of the child's educational support team. Whereas our model is more of educational direct service delivery, and we're not doing as much of the behavioral side. But I think you would need to, the question wouldn't be about workload, it would be more about what is our special ed delivery model across the district, and looking at how is that meeting the needs of our students, and would a workload model meet those needs better? I think that would be the direction to probably go if you were going to ask that.
And I think the first step of that is our quarterly meetings that we have attempted to hold this year and involve all special educators and related service providers to provide input to begin to develop a philosophy and a baseline of what does our service delivery model look like throughout the district, and what do we believe inclusion to look like, because essentially that's going to drive then the needs and responsibilities for those special educators. And I value the input from our special education teams to be able to provide insight into that. So we have begun that work, and we're at the very early stages of that, but I feel it's important that that is there's a grassroots effort to articulate what that model is going to look like.
Okay, and that is starting and?
Yep, we've already met once. I think, we're at the very early stages,
Sure.
but we have those meetings scheduled to run through next year so that we'll be able to continue that work.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just one more question on your statement about the evaluations. I wanted to make sure that I understood who did those. I think that may have just changed where the teachers do the evals, the case managers do the evals, but could you just clarify that and when it changed, if it changed?
Yep. So when we suspect a student has a disability, or if a student needs to go through the evaluation process to redetermine whether or not they're eligible for special education, we develop a set of assessment questions and evaluations that might answer those questions. Academic evaluations, when we're monitoring and measuring the level of academic growth, that is done by the special education teacher. If we are looking at a student's cognitive profile or their social emotional learning, adaptive behavior skills, those are done by a school psychologist. So the transition from an academic evaluator, a person who is solely responsible for completing those academic evaluations, to the special educator, I believe that was about 7 or 8 years ago, at least. I think it was before our time. And so that was a fairly recent shift.
Okay, yep, thank you.
I have one more paragraph, Ben. It's a short one. I probably should have put it at the top. And finally, starting this month, the school nurses, our health services department is going to be working with the School Nurses Association to formalize practices to ensure consistency throughout the district in areas such as medication administration, health screenings, and the management of chronic health conditions. So again, we're trying to go back to bringing folks together to provide some consistency on how we operate preschool through 12th grade, not only in Keene, but in our town schools as well across all 5 subdepartments of student services.
Great.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Dylan? No?
I have one quick one. Would the eye screenings that the Lions Club does that fall under health services?
It does.
Apparently there's a permission form, the way it was worded, that if the parent doesn't sign the permission form, the way it was worded, the parent doesn't sign the permission form unless the school nurse is there to give the eye screening, they won't get it. Versus because the permission is to really give the Lions Club the ability to just use the little machine. So I'm wondering if, and I don't know if this is pilot policy, but could we look at that permission form? Because I think a lot of kids are missing out on the screening, which is pretty important if they can't see. George wants to say something.
If I may, Jen.
Of course.
Yeah, that's not board.
It didn't
I
go
would
through
direct the
policy?
parents to contact Kate directly about that. But we don't, at the board level, we don't control those permissions.
Permission slips?
Yeah.
Okay. We approve.
It's
Field trip.
a level of micromanaging. We would be here, this committee would be here 4 hours every month if we got into those. But yeah, definitely direct them to Kate because she'll know what regulations are involved there and why the forms are written the way that they are.
Super, thanks.
And is there maybe a way to make it, if you don't sign, you have to sign to not have your kid have it?
Yeah, I'd have to take a look at the form
I don't
and
know it either.
better understand the situation that's come up.
Yep.
But certainly, please feel free to share my information. I'm happy to
Okay.
help.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
All All right, if there's no other questions, we will move on to Mr. Town and the CCC update.
Good evening. Oh, thank you. We haven't met yet. My name is Richard Town. I'm the director of the Cheshire Career Center at Keene High, and I'm glad to give you an update on what's been happening at the Career Center. I trust that you've received the update that I sent along in the packet. I guess the first thing I want to talk about is probably the end of the story, which is our enrollment for next year is very strong. And the chart that I supplied shows a total of 1,489 students who are, these are enrollments, not necessarily students, but these are enrollments in the various classes that are offered through the Career Center. And with that chart, I also included some other information about gender, grade level, and the towns in which the students come from, so you can see where our enrollment numbers are coming from. And then the last part of that packet is the enrollment numbers for the individual programs for next year. And I've shaded in the program names that are currently full. Several of these programs have had lotteries to get into for level 1 for next year. And enrollment continues to be strong, and I think that has a great deal to do with our outreach efforts and also by the sheer nature of having some pretty strong programs and building some programs that have had some turnover in staff. And one in particular is our health science program, where we typically run in our leveled programs 2 sections of level 1 for juniors and then 1 section of level 2 for seniors. And there's some built-in, 50% of the students are unable to go on to the next level. So we've expanded our level 2 health science to 24 students for next year. And we are about the level of servicing all of the students who are capable and who want to continue in health science for the following year. So in the future, we're going to have to figure out a way to maybe adjust the model of delivery so we don't have to build in that 50% of excluding 50% of the students who want to move on. So we're looking at an every other year model where 1 year we're offering 2 sections of level 1 and then the following year 2 sections of level 2, so we could maintain that cohort all the way through the programs. But that's yet to be decided. And some of our programs are shifting into what I call a semesterized model. For example, what we did with horticulture this year, we had traditionally had horticulture 1. It's a year-long program for sophomores and juniors, and then students would move on to horticulture 2, and they would study 4 or 5 different competency areas. And for next year, you approved us to move on to semesterizing the program into the specialty areas of landscape design, floriculture, an intro to horticulture program, and greenhouse management. So students can sort of specialize in those particular areas. The same thing that we had done with our computer programming program, to sort of specialize that so students could personalize their experience. So if they want to mix and match, for example, a drafting and manufacturing program or a business and a horticulture program, to sort of personalize that experience for students so they don't have to commit to one particular program. And we found that industry and the post-secondary folks like that sort of thing because it allows students to really personalize their career path, and it mirrors what's going on in the post-secondary world anyway, where students are able to do a personalized major or micro-credentials and things like that. So getting off track there a little bit, but my point is that enrollment is pretty strong for next year, and the last page of that enrollment chart, you'll see that we're actually at 87% capacity next year for already, and we haven't even started working on individual student schedules. And some of those programs that you see that have open seats, the Keene High school councils will be going through and filling all of those seats, especially for some of our introductory programs. So I expect us to be pretty full for next year. And, you know, I think a lot of that success has to do with our marketing and our outreach campaigns. We're very lucky that it just so happens that during that SAT day, they were able to do a freshman career exploration day with all the freshmen. And we allowed them to choose 4 or 5 programs that they can visit during the school day and get an hour's worth of time with each program and really hear about all the programs. And so many of our students, our feedback on that is, I wish this happened before course selection because I would have changed the courses that I would have picked. So those students will have to wait a year in advance to pick their classes for sophomore and junior year, but I think they still remember the experience because they talk about it in their surveys. We also have a very strong ambassador program where each program picks 1 or 2 ambassadors for the program, and they do all of our outreach with Fall Mountain and Monadnock and some of our middle schools. They do all of our tours, and it's really that student-to-student marketing that I think is pretty successful, and students are able to talk about the things to their peers about what is important about the program because we ask them to tell your peers what you do during the your automotive class or your manufacturing class, and talk about what you want to do with your life after high school. And I think it comes from a different place than having Mr. Town up there talking about this. It just hits much differently, I think, when it's their peers. And we've also done a few other things that I think are important. We've really ramped up the expectations for earning an honor cord for the program. It used to be just completing the program, and I made the change to get an honor cord for the program, you have to be highly successful in the program. We've changed that to earning a B or better in the program, which I think high achievement gets you high achievement. The other thing that we've done is we've implemented a National Technical Honor Society this year. This is our first year doing it. We inducted 11 students in the fall for their current seniors, and we're going to be inducting 17 juniors for next year's program, and that's on May 21st. And we started something last year where we started a signing day program, and it was exceeded my expectations. We had a lot more students sign up for this than we had anticipated, where students come and they let us know which college or company they're going to be working for, and we do like a signing day, like an athlete does when they sign on to play D1 football somewhere. And we shared all the pictures to social media, and the parents showed up, and it was very touching to see the parents posing for pictures with their graduating senior, with the River Valley Community College, over their shoulder, and health science down below, and a banner, or the Career Center banner, and it made for a pretty proud moment. And so for this year, we're doing it again, and we've invited Geskus Picture Studios to come in to take professional photos. Last year, it was one of our staff members with a camera, and so I expect to have professional photos taken for this event, and we're going to be sharing that out through social media, and offering parents an opportunity to purchase a photo set for for their home or whatever. So it's one of those things that I think made a pretty big impact on our advertising campaign, and in a big sense, I've been pretty active on social media this year and have been for a while, advertising all of the different things that the Career Center is doing, because it's really, I made notes of, I was preparing for my report tonight, and I wrote down all the names of the programs, and just something updating about just 1 or 2 things that are highlights for the year. And I think it would be almost overwhelming to give you a report of once a year for all of the things that are happening in all of these programs throughout the year. It just would be overwhelming. And so I take it as a comment. I tell the teachers that every time you go on a field trip, or you have a guest speaker, or you're doing a project, or you finish a big project like the shed project, take a picture, give me a caption, and we'll put it out there on social media. And we've got a lot of really good positive responses, and I think parents and students are very proud of the work that their kids are doing in the Career Center, and I'm very proud of what we're doing there too. And I think it shows with how proud the kids are. And we have our last event, which is the scholarship event, that's happening on the 28th, where we hand out our scholarships and give certificates for all of our program completers. And recognize that student success. So those are the big events that are happening. Yeah, I think it would be just too overwhelming to talk about all the programs. I could be here all night talking about all the different things that they're doing in the programs. I think I'll wrap up with some of our challenges for going into the next school year. Some of the issues that we're facing. Obviously, staffing shortage. Our open positions are a career counselor, construction trades, family consumer science, IT programming, and instructional para, and the woodworking position are all open. So staffing is continually an issue, and I'm hopeful. We have a lot of irons in the fire with as far as interviewing and reference checks, and I think we might be okay for next year. I've got a lot of the candidate pools are increasing in strength, and we're getting more applications, and we're getting them sooner. So it's looking up for staffing, but it's still right now. These are our current open positions, and it's May 13th. So my goal would be a year from now being able to sit in this chair and say that all of our positions are full, and we've made connections with mentors, and new teachers are already in the building, and meeting with their predecessors and looking at curriculum. I want to do that next year. So another issue that we're facing going into next year is the constant equipment repairs that we're facing, and either replacing or repairing equipment in every single program is very time consuming and very expensive. I'm hoping at some point to get a renovation of the Career Center that would include some of that stuff, but and there's actually a report coming out pretty soon, recommendations for that renovation process in the state that I hope that we can take advantage of in the coming years, and I'll be back to talk about that at some point and where we stand in that process. But that and with the turnover in staff, where we lost some of that institutional knowledge, regaining some of that knowledge on our equipment and our facility is very important, and I hope that we can build that for the future and then leave that to the people that follow us in our various positions, and that hadn't been done in the past. And so I hope to leave you, when I retire, a binder full of equipment and facilities information that my successor can work with. So, and that also, our facility needs is another big issue, and I think that if Mr. Dooley was here, he would tell you that our electrician and our plumber are very, very busy with repairing and updating and maintaining all of this stuff. And the Career Center is a heavy user of all that stuff that for our water and electricity needs and all of that stuff. And I think I'll end with our an ongoing issue is the turnover that's happened and sort of the onboarding issues that we need to plan for in the future. Going into next year, out of the 21 teachers that we have at the Career Center, there'll only be 5 that I haven't hired myself in the last 3 years. And that's not a lot of institutional knowledge and a lot of people around for mentoring. And that's a challenge that every experienced teacher has 2 or 3 teachers that they're mentoring for the following year. And so I'm hoping that once again that we can start our hiring a little bit earlier, and so that we can make those connections with the outgoing teachers. But that's quite a bit, and an ongoing challenge is how to onboard all of our new teachers. And these are folks who are coming into us not from an education background, but they're coming in from industry. So they are coming to us with decades of industry experience, and their challenge is how to fashion that industry experience into a program for high school students in a cohesive manner. And that's the big challenge for what they're doing, and they need some help in doing that. I will say that the RBT model that we have here in our district, the cohort model for Research for Better Teaching, has been tremendous, and all of the teachers that go through that program talk about how impactful that is to their practice that they take part in for their site-based learning plan. So that's one of my challenges going into next year, and I hope to come back next year with some definite things we've done to onboard new teachers and bring them into the profession in a way that will sustain their employment. So any questions or And then we'll throw a lot at you.
I don't think so. Any questions?
No. Good luck with that. I think you're on the right track in terms of onboarding and trying to collect that institutional knowledge. It's important. But all
Good.
really great, great updates.
Yeah, absolutely. I always enjoy reading. I share with the board every month, you know, all of what each of the programs are doing, and, you know, we really feel like you're doing great work. It's a hard job.
I appreciate it.
Thank you. All right. Ed 306 rules.
So Cindy and I aren't going to overwhelm you with a lot relative to the Ed 306 rules. So
You're not sharing us the entire budget?
no, not today.
No, it'll come up, though.
So Ed 306, really, it just in layman's terms, it outlines what an adequate education is for a middle and high school student. So the old 306 rules may have said that all high school students need to take 2 levels of math, 2 or 3 levels of science, 1 including a lab science. That's what it may say, but there's been revisions to the 306 rules that Cindy will talk a little bit about. But really, our task now is to look at the current iteration of the 306 rules. Mike, Cindy, and I are meeting Thursday. Mike Smith and I and Cindy are meeting Thursday to look at how the revisions, this current iteration, may or may not impact what we currently do through our identified competencies and performance indicators. Because the state may or may not have suggested a certain pathway that may or may not be an obstacle for the work that's currently underway in SAU 29. So we're going to do a little crosswalk ourselves and figure out what are next steps. And then come back and present to you in the fall of our direction. Go ahead, Sid.
So Brian's touched on a part of the 306s. The 306s are all the rules to run public education.
Right.
So it's everything with inside schools. The board has responsibilities that the SAU keeps you on track of. We will be reviewing, I'll give you one simple example. All of the social studies courses got rewritten, so we have to change our entire scope and sequence for social studies. They redefined the number of minimum credits. We just did the diplomas and clarified it a year ago. We'll be bringing you a new recommendation for the class of coming in 26, 27. I think the big piece that Brian's trying to get to is that we now have competencies. Each of those sets of competencies has a required source that the Board of Ed has adopted. If SAU 29 has chosen a different source, we'll be bringing that to you as a motion for you because you have local control. So if we want to do more deeper standards in our visual art program, they might choose the national standards versus the state standards, and we would bring that to you so that you would see it and you would adopt it. So you'll have 2 major motions coming out of us over the summer that'll come to Ed Committee. There's a whole bunch of us that are looking at what the board pieces are. There's a group of teachers that put out, it's interesting, we could share it with you, a dashboard that looks at everything. But the competency piece is probably the big one right now, making sure that we know, you know what we're doing so that you can see what we're presenting for curriculum. That's the big piece, and then the diploma changes. So our teachers have been working on this since January. We're pretty close to ready, but we won't have it for your June meeting.
Okay,
So,
that's fine, in the fall.
yeah, it's a fall thing, and it's effective 26, 27, so we have time.
Yep.
I'm not too worried about anything, and like, there's a policy section, but you already have all the policies in place. You know, you have lots of people advising you. It is the competency piece, but these are all the rules. This is what's been stuck down and conquered, so you should know it finally passed, and we're moving on it, and, you know, some of them are in effect right now, some of them are 26, 27. The curricular piece in social studies is the huge lift. So.
But for example, the Ed 306 rules required all students to take a civics exam. That's one of the things that they kind of oversee, govern, dictate, suggest, whatever it may be. So changing with this iteration. But there's some extensive change. But again, as Cindy noted, you do have local control that if you, curricularly, if you feel as though a change by adopting the national art standards versus the state art standards are going to interrupt programming or practice or the investment of energy that teachers have put in, you have the opportunity to keep our current structure in place.
Okay, that's encouraging.
Yeah, no, I don't see anything that's going to hijack our work.
Okay.
I think the social studies piece, it's about scope and sequence. Where do you put U.S. history versus civics? And they added, now we have to do, we had Holocaust in there. They keep adding these little tiny tidbits. And genocide, they changed the U.S. history, now there's a New Hampshire history. So there's a real focus on social studies. And this is coming in the state law. It's kind of a weird place to put it, but it's there. They took away a half a credit of required English. So it's now, instead of 4 credits, 1 each year, it's 3.5, but they added a half a credit of rhetoric. What we have to do is come to you and say some of them are embedded and some of them are actual courses. And all of that is what we'll be bringing to you. So there's nuances that we're dancing with. But the diploma's there. But I don't see anything that's hijacking our work, especially not with the competencies. It invigorates career technical education more than just CTE. Like every kid has to come out with some career aspect, even a kid petitioning for a 20 credit diploma. I don't let them walk out as an escape. I hold them hostage until they do something career-wise. So, we're already problem solving about that. I've pulled 3 requests back. I'm like, show me what they're going to. Don't tell me what they're running away from. So those are good things. I think those are exciting. It supports competency-based education, and it holds us as educators accountable for getting it finally implemented. So there's good stuff in there that's going to help us. It's just a lot of work to get through.
We'll bring you the crosswalk and how we crosswalk and came to our decision that we will present to the Ed Committee, who will then hopefully take our suggestion and bring forward
To the board.
And again, we have until 26, 27, but we're moving on it starting this week on Thursday, beginning the conversation with our middle and high school principals and identify what are the potential impact areas and making decisions on how do we rectify the areas. So we'll bring it to you in the fall.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Good to go.
Question. You mentioned Ed, Brian and Cindy, who's Ed?
No.
I said it wrong.
Michael Smith.
Mike Smith,
Yeah.
principal at the middle
That
school.
makes sense.
Yeah.
And
And what we'll do is since the Ed 306 rules do impact all middle schools, but Mike being the biggest provider for the middle school education, then what we'll do is we meet every other month we meet as a principals team, 612, where we'll bring that information back to the K-8 principals so they can have some opinion and some decision-making in terms of this is what KMS's direction is going to be, may or may not Westmoreland, Chesterfield, and Marlboro go in that similar direction.
okay, so then how about the Keene Elementary who don't go, who are K through 5? How will they be included in that?
Yeah, the Ed 306 rules cover everything.
Yeah, you mentioned you'll bring back.
We'll bring it back to them. Ben oversees the elementary, and they meet monthly, I believe, as a team. So if we see something that potentially is a hindrance to the current programming at the elementary level, we'll loop Ben into the conversation so Ben can meet with his principals.
Good. Dylan, any questions? No? Good, we'll look forward to seeing that in the fall then.
Thank you.
Terrific, thank you, Cindy.
I'll stay for the field trip.
Okay. Panama, yeah, this was,
Here's the good news. Panama's off the table right now.
okay.
I found out at about 5 o'clock, so I didn't get to pull it out of your piece. They're gonna go back through and look at the curriculum pieces, that there's two sides, if you'll remember. One was the HST, the other one was Spanish.
Right.
Neither side felt like there was enough to substantiate their half. So they're gonna go back to the company and add more of the health opportunities to it. And I said that we wouldn't be bringing it till fall, so they're gonna try for your June meeting, but I don't know that they're gonna pull that off. And they're also, excuse me?
June meeting has a big agenda, so good.
Yes. So anyways, and they're aware of getting the additional information about the travel insurance and the, how does the company manage the safety part of it?
Right.
So,
Okay, great.
so yeah,
we
you don't have to do anything with it now.
Don't have to do anything with that now?
And you should not have a field trip from wrestling. That should have been removed.
It's not on here, so
Okay.
we don't.
We had a trip to Pennsylvania that
Yep.
got canceled today as
Oh.
well.
Well, that's too bad.
Maybe not.
Maybe not.
There's reasons why you don't go to Pennsylvania, so maybe not.
All right.
Love Pennsylvania.
I do too. It was really weird. It was Messiah College
Yep.
in Mechanicsburg. That's where the field trip was. And I heard the field trip was canceled, and I'm like, okay, Mechanicsburg. And then I open up the applicant of it, somebody who I'm interviewing, and that's where she went to college. It was
Oh.
like, woo, in my office. I was like, oh my God, she went to college there. So,
Big Christian university.
Yeah, Messiah College, okay.
all right.
Okay, then
Thank you.
on
Is
to
that-
testing update.
So the next few agenda items are mine, so I'm just going to kind of roll along. So testing, it's, the spring is just crazy because we do our Ames Web benchmarking for the third time of the year for the spring benchmark. We also have 5th, 8th grade, and 11th grade science SAS testing. And then we have 3 through 8 reading and ELA and math testing going on. Everybody, whether it's Keene or the towns, they're all at various places. We have seen some of the data, some of the results from those who have completed one or both of the tests. And for me, it comes back to the question, are we doing enough to prepare kids for that high-stakes test? Ames Web data, which I put in your folder, and you can, I'll have Ben open that up. It's interesting because the Ames Web data, I'll use 8th grade math, for example. They are consistently from year to year in the 65th to 75th percentile proficient, but they're the 33rd percentile proficient on the SAS. And we've talked over and over about the Ames Web and SAS not really being a married couple, that one tests certain knowledge and another tests a different set of knowledge. I would love, and I've broached it with the principals, we haven't had a conversation about it, I've broached it, really would love to bring back the NWA, the Northwest Educational Assessment, which is better aligned to the SAS, but also when students are deficient in an area, it tells you what intervention to employ to close that gap. So it's beneficial from the intervention side of things, as well as being a tighter alignment to the SAS. Whether years ago it was dropped and they moved to Ames Web, we would still have to keep Ames Web for a certain population of students around oral reading fluency, phonemic awareness, things of that sort, which the NWA does not test for. But in terms of comprehension and math, procedural, and declarative knowledge, then I think there's a better tool to prepare our kids for that SAS, which the SAS is our report card grade. So we certainly want to reflect that the education that our students are getting is a quality education, and the only way to provide that narrative is to better our SAS scores. Parents who go to the website and look at data don't see how well our kids are doing on our local assessments. They don't see report card grades. They don't get that composite of a student, they see the SAS scores. And I've been a proponent of moving away from, I wish we could move away from computer-based testing, because I just really feel strongly that our students would perform much better on a written version of the test, because I know our teachers are providing a quality education. But that computer-based test for both math and science is very literacy-based, but it's also a test of your resilience. And I think kids are just tired of looking at devices and not on their own personal leisure time, but from the educational side of things. So that's where we're at with testing. We'll have this deeper conversation around the data. I did want to show you how to use this table.
Yeah.
So if you go to, Ben, did you open this from the Keene Education Committee? Is that where you opened it from? Yep. No. Yeah. So go to 5 years of data. No, this is the wrong one, sorry. I have to upload, you just need to download it, Ben. You can't open it from there, you gotta download it.
Yeah, I was looking at it before I came to the meeting, and I was
Yeah, you have to download it first.
confused.
While it's downloading. Because I know it takes a while. The NWA test that you mentioned, Brian, is that computer-based?
It is.
Figure all they all are
But the good
now,
thing
but-
about that is, so say you were taking the test page as you were a 7th grader, and you got the first 3 questions right, it'll bump the rigor of the next few questions. Meanwhile, if you get them wrong, it would bump you back. Because what it's trying to do is trying to find what level, so we'll use a strand of ratio and probability, one of the math strands. It wants to determine whether you are on 8th grade, 7th grade, 6th grade, 5th grade, or above grade level, so that way it can provide the proper intervention for you. So it's intuitive, and it's bumping you around based on the rigor. So Ben, if you go to 5 years of data, Ben, bottom tab. No, go back, sorry, go back to summary. Can you scroll up? Yeah, so under measure name, you can click on the drop down there. Yep. And you'll be able to choose what you want to look at. I would suggest that you look at reading comprehension and math. So only click one at a time. Click on math or click on reading comprehension. Don't click on the individual strands, because we're looking at the composite, we're not looking at the individual strands at this point. Then you go down to school name. Don't scroll anywhere, Ben, please. Go down to school name. Every school in the district, in the SAU, you can choose any school that you want to look at, including the towns. Then if you go to type of ed, you will choose between either regular ed or special ed or all. So you can separate the special ed from the regular ed, put that component in there, and then you go to student grade, and you can choose any grade, or you could look at it as a whole district. So it really, we created the data so you could, so right now you're looking at 7th grade math. So what this is telling you, it's telling you that over the last 4 years, our students have scored that percentile. So when it says low, that means they're low risk. That is their percentile proficient. High risk would be those students who are significantly below proficiency. So our students consistently are somewhere from the 65th to 80th percentile in 7th grade math on the Ames web. In the fall, they were 59.8. We haven't uploaded the spring scores yet. And I only asked them to do fall to spring. I took out the winter benchmark because typically you'll look at it from fall to fall or spring to spring in terms of checking for regression. We haven't uploaded the spring score because not all schools have completed their Ames web testing for the spring, and we do it upload all at once rather than doing it by individual schools. So if Ben were to go to scroll back up, Ben. Just change the type of ed from regular ed to special ed. And this is what Kate and I are going to talk about in more detail. I'm not going into detail about this. I'm just giving you an overview so you can navigate it yourself and look at some things. But what this tells you is that our special ed population, the low are the kids who are on grade level or proficient and are low risk. And just look to the right, the high risk, those are the students who are in the red and we have concerns about. So whether you make the deduction that the red on those bar graphs that we saw at the last meeting are entirely special ed, I think that's inaccurate because there are some general ed kids in there. But certainly Kate and I are going to meet at the end of May and put together a presentation for June that talks about this data. There are some things that we need to do to affect this cohort. Absolutely.
Okay, yeah, this was a particular thing that I personally wanted to, to see.
Yep.
Having adjusted the number range roughly 2 years ago, I think.
But it's
bumping up
yeah.
the.
It's interesting though, and I don't want to, again, there's all kinds of variables that affect this.
Yeah.
But it was interesting, when Kate and I looked at it quickly, we saw this big regression from the spring of 1920 to the fall of 2021. And that was because our ESY program was not face-to-face that year because of COVID. It was virtual. So that might be a variable.
Yep.
But it's interesting also is that when our special ed staff numbers were lower, those scores were higher, which was interesting. So the increase in number of staff didn't affect our test scores. They actually dropped. So we're trying to figure out, navigate that and as one variable, because there are many variables that go into why our test results are the way they are. And we couldn't name them all, and if we try to, we're being presumptuous that, we don't know. Because kids are individual, and who knows what's going on with a student on any given day. But you can go up to that top, Ben, and you can navigate this on your own. I will share it with my Westmoreland friends so they can have it. And you can just pick what you want to pick, look at it. I mean, if we wanted to, Ben, go to measure name. Click on that. I think you right-clicked. Go to measure name, not school name, measure name. And click on one of the, scroll down, Ben, under math, and click on, I can't see it from, I want something more granular.
So math fact fluency?
Yeah, math fact fluency. So get out of that and go to student grade. Hit the click OK, then go to student grade. And then go to all. And now what this will tell you is how, if we want to look and see defined themes in a granular level, we could click on particular strands within the discipline of math and see how our students are performing overall on math fact fluency. And you can see that math fact fluency perhaps is an area that we really need to focus on. Yeah. That's what this data can tell you. So you guys can navigate it on your own, and then Kate and I will come back and talk in more detail with you about this. You can actually go and you can follow a cohort through by going to 1920 in grade 5, see what they scored, then look at the 2021 for grade 6, 2021, 21, 22 for grade 7, and see where they showed improvement or maybe where they stepped backwards. If you go to last month's superintendent's report, you can pull up the SAS data, and that's also grouped by cohort. So you can look at how they're doing on the SAS by cohort and how they're doing on the Ames Web by cohort and look at it longitudinally over the last 4 years. Okay?
I think that was Ames Web on the at least that's how it's labeled.
Sorry, there was November, I think he said November, he put the SAS,
November.
and then April, he put the Ames Web.
Ames Web, yep, okay, that makes sense.
But November, I think, is the SAS data. That's when it's unembargoed in the fall.
Okay.
So take a look at this, and then Kate and I will come back and talk in more detail. Ben, can you go back to the agenda, please? Thank you. For next month, besides Kate and I talking about data in a little bit more detail, and then you guys will have a month to put together some questions that you might want to ask. And if you choose to, Jen, if you sent those questions ahead of time, we could frame our presentation around that as well. That would help us.
That'd be great.
Also, on the June meeting, Mike Smith will be here to talk about the ATSI designation at Keene Middle School, which is a designation based on the special ed cohort being sub-proficient. Multiple. But it's, it's the special ed population and it's the free and reduced population as identified for being sub-proficient. So they're put on the ATSI designation. So Mike's going to come present the plan on how we're trying to address that going forward.
Okay, in June.
June.
Okay.
So we'll do data, we'll do Mike Smith, and then I know there was a third thing that we wanted to do. I know there was a third thing. I'll think of it. Jen and I will email you as those 3 talking points for June, which will take up the entirety of the meeting.
Okay.
Well, oh, no, that's it. Sam Centros will be here for ELO, I'm sorry, to present on the numbers and the work that she's done over the course of the year, and then Mike Smith, and then data. So those 3 talking pieces.
Okay.
You mentioned you'll be talking about the data conversation committee?
Yeah, so I'll give a very brief in June. So our CBE committee is meeting for the last time on May 22nd. I think it's May 22nd, which is, I think, maybe a Wednesday or a Thursday. Pretty much to basically say thank you for the work because they made a lot of decisions relative to our CBE. They have a couple of things that they've tabled that we'll finalize on that last meeting date and push out for next year. But the big thing is that committee's kind of run its course because now that you have your framework, we need to get down to the practical issue of instruction and how do we increase rigor. And that's really not that composition of that group. Some of them may transition over to more of an instructional committee, but that current makeup is not perhaps what we need in terms of instructional model. So we're going to meet, I think they have two things tabled. One, an additional designation. So our designations, we have proficiency with distinction, proficiency, and emerging, I believe, and they want to do partially proficient because that developing or emerging was just too broad because kids are so far along that continuum that they wanted to make sure parents understood that, you know, if I'm giving out a developing designation relative to certain indicators, but the kid's showing growth but haven't moved into proficient, and they keep seeing developing, it's discouraging. Whereas if you're partially proficient, you're gaining momentum, you're going in this direction. So that was one thing, and I know the other was to use the most recent calculation model rather than mode. We used mode this year, trying to because mode helps develop some consistency with effort, because kids, you have to have at least 3 grades in order to find a mode. And if the grades are all over the place, we thought that using the mode would develop this consistency with effort and accountability for students. But really, if you're looking at the model of proficiency, standards-based, competency-based ed, a kid could be growing on this upward trajectory, but not truly get it until June. So you want to reward the end product. I use Usain Bolt, the world's greatest sprinter. Well, when he does his preliminary races prior to the Olympics, he might get a series of firsts and series of seconds, and then goes to the Olympics and dominates and gets gold. They don't average all the other things together and say, well, your mode is a 2, so you're getting the silver. You know, we want to make sure that our kids are making progress, they're gaining momentum, they're becoming more sophisticated in how they answer problems relative to the indicators. But some kids, you know, there's this saying that that learning is dynamic, it's fluid, doesn't happen in a vacuum, and it certainly doesn't happen on our time frame. You know, that's why we tell teachers all the time, you can say to your students that you're having a test on Friday, but that's on your time frame. You should be doing some sort of assessment to determine maybe Jen needs a few more days to grapple with this material and meet with me and actually take the test next Tuesday, rather than thinking that her learning is ready on my time frame, not her time frame. And that's where that most recent component comes in, of using the most recent grade along that proficiency continuum to determine whether the kid is proficient or not. But we have to move away from this notion that learning is static, because it's not. And take into account that some kids can get there, they just might need a little bit more time to get there. And that's what learning is. It's a dynamic endeavor, and we need to treat it that way. So that's the group that will be meeting on the 22nd. I said that they're going to receive some professional development hours that they can use for the recertification. They all earn 15 hours of professional development time. And then we'll transition to more of a data instructional model where we use data to look at what is our practice and what are the practices that really change outcomes, and start having conversations around practice. Yeah.
So that's the data committee?
That will be the data committee going into next year, yes.
Okay. I was going to ask if you could share the work plan, if there's a work plan for the data committee.
We're still working on that.
Okay.
Yeah. Cindy Gallagher and Ben and I meet with a lady named Heather Jenkins from Demonstrated Success, and we're trying to finalize the composition. We've been getting feedback from some principals who want to kind of continue to wrap their head around what that model could look like. We haven't finalized what it's going to look like, but we know that we need to be more data informed and use data to have richer conversations at the district level and at the building level in order to really pinpoint where are areas of need and how can we effectively change those deficiencies into growth, into strengths. You know, again, we have a very gifted staff across the SAU. Our SAS scores are not indicative of their hard work or their strength as instructionalists. We just have to find, if we have this common area of deficiency, is there a certain methodology that we can employ consistently at all grade levels in that discipline to produce a different result in that area? So that's what we'll be doing, and we'll bring that back to you guys as an ed committee.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
And I had a couple of questions on the CBE
Yep.
committee. You mentioned that they're going to close out by looking at the grading designations. I think I understand that the board needs to approve the grading grade system. There's some policy, I read it. can't pull it up right now, though. So I just wondered if that would be something that we would be looking at?
Well, we present to you.
Yeah.
You then vote as a group to move it forward to the board. The board, yays or nays. I've never been with the board when they didn't do what the school, what the educators thought were best. So I think it's more, I don't know if it's an actual vote, George, or, but we present to you, you bring it to them. I know, and Cindy's not here, but I know we've had these ongoing conversations. So currently, 9th grade is competency-based. Next year, 9th and 10th grade. And there's this notion that, so two things are happening at the high school. I don't like calling it a hybrid, but it's kind of a hybrid model. They attach performance indicators to their assessments.
Mm-hmm.
The teachers first look at how the student performed relative to those indicators, and then give them a traditional grade based on their performance on the indicators. But they get a traditional grade. But parents can also go in and look and see how well they're doing on each of the indicators as well, because they're being scored. Whether or not they'll ever move away from that, I don't know if Cindy will ever propose it, and I really honestly don't care, because what are the indicators, what's the purpose of the indicators at the high school level? It's about intervention, it's about informing instruction, and it's about telling parents and students where there's areas of deficiency and where there's areas of strength. I don't care if they give A, B, C, D, don't care about that. It's how we are using those indicators to inform instruction and to inform parents and students on progress. So, as I said to Cindy, I don't really have a dog in the fight whether you stay in a hybrid model forever, because understand what the indicators are there for. The indicators were never there, the intent was never there to say, well, you're a B student on this indicator. That's not the purpose of them. So I think the high school is a different animal than elementary and middle school. Elementary and middle school, I kind of consider it a KA intervention. All along, you are individualizing education to prepare them for an environment where it may be less individualized and personalized because it's a credit-based program. And honestly, we've never even had the conversation, and we probably need to at the ed committee level. What's our level of accountability to students? I mean, you can get all this research saying that retaining a student is not beneficial to the student, and then you can find the contrary argument saying it is appropriate, because if you are a standards-based model and Paige is my 8th grader and she in math doesn't meet 3 of the 5 competencies, then are we providing a disservice to her putting her in freshman math when she only knows 40% of the content and skill? So we have to have eventually that conversation, because again, that is what the indicators are really there for, around accountability as well. And how do you hold kids accountable? So Phil, that's a big philosophical question. Some schools, some districts are totally averse to retaining students. They move kids developmentally and biologically along that continuum. But being if all of a sudden they get to the high school, they don't earn enough credits, they're automatically retained because it's a credit-based program. But are they not meeting the requirements in high school, maybe because we didn't do our due diligence prior to that? So that will have to be a philosophical conversation. I think you could probably ask every educator, and they're going to have a different stance on that, of when it's appropriate and what grade levels it's not appropriate. So there's still things to be discussed when it goes to the high school grading. As Cindy and I and Abigail Blaze, the curriculum person, talked about, understand what the purpose of the indicators are there for at the high school level versus what a grade is there for at the high school level. A grade is there for in many reasons. It's not for college acceptance. It's a scholarship tool. It's a GPA tool. That's what it's there for. Because colleges will tell you, they don't even care what that grade looks like. Some schools have written narratives for grades, for report cards, and don't have grades at all. So understand what the grade is the purpose for and what the indicators are purpose for, because they're two separate things. So you can keep them separate at the high school level and still get the value and still maintain the integrity of a competency-based model by never shifting the high school to a different grading practice. That's my feeling. So,
George?
Brian did a much better job with the philosophical part of that than I ever could. I'm only sitting here to answer the policy question. That grading policy, and I don't remember the exact wording either, but it's only like a paragraph.
Yes.
And it exists because it is in Ed 306.
yes.
And we hashed this out at the board level, actually in the education committee, when Brian first came on, because one of his missions, one of his charges when he came on was to gain some actual traction on competency-based education. For a little background, the state mandated competency-based education at the high school level about, yeah, I was going to say 12, so I wasn't too far off. And the board, and that predates everyone except Chris Roberts on the board. And the board at that time said, okay, high school, do it. And it took until Brian got here, what, 5, 6 years ago? Yeah, to start gaining, and then Cindy as well, and Mike Smith showing up at the high school for a while to gain any actual traction on this project. But around that time, we hashed out what does a grading system mean? And what we settled on is the competency-based education is the grading system, separately from how grades are reported. Because you can, and he gave, again, a much better explanation than I can, but you can take those, the CBE results, and you can report them in a myriad different ways. And that's what we call grading, but in terms of the state law, all it really means is the competency-based versus just a straight-up test-based pass-fail type thing. This does not absolve you guys or them from going over all of these changes that happen and explaining what it means and what it's going to mean to our constituents. So absolutely keep on top of them, but we probably don't have to have another vote on it unless it changes so drastically that we as a board say, all right, now we need to have the full conversation and weigh in on this.
Yeah, I think, if I may, Jen, I think if the high school abruptly said, oh, sorry, I think if the high school abruptly said, we are going to drop our 101-point scale, move away from letter grades and use emojis, I think you'd want to have a conversation and vote on whether or not you actually use emojis or ABCDs. You know, the 101-point scale, I've used that analogy over and over again. I could give each of you 101 blueberry muffins in front of you and tell you to organize them 0 to 100, and nobody's going to put them in the same order, ever. 100% of the time, they're going to be wrong, because you cannot differentiate between a 77 and 78, 83 and an 84. It's a matter of nuance. It's a matter of who's looking at the assignment. Because when I took 3 points off, George took 4 points off. He has his reasoning, I have my reasoning. So that's why the indicators are so important, because you attach those to an assessment and then you look at how kids performed through that lens and then figure out what that is and then assign it an A, B, C, D, you know. Because I think when you start looking at the A, B, C, D, F scale, I shake my head, because we allow kids to graduate high school to D average. That means they've learned 63% of what we consider important, content and skills. That means they didn't earn 37% of the content and skills that are important. But if you have, somehow you have that measure on performance indicators, and you're saying, you know what, for each of your competencies, you have to pass 80% of your performance indicators, now you've increased the expectation. And as Tim Rohr loves to say, your expectation in your building will be whatever your lowest expectation is. You know, so we either raise the bar and hold ourselves, everybody, to it, or we continue to say that this is good enough when is good enough. And that's what we really have to define, what is good enough. And I think that's one thing that competency-based education does, because it says, here are the competencies, here are the indicators, here are the expectations for all kids, special ed, general ed, AP, honors, foundations. You can all meet this expectation. It may take Jen versus Dylan a different path, a different modality, a different length of time, but you can do it. The reporting piece, I don't care about. Again, that is for a different purpose. The indicators are there to inform educators, students, and parents about where your student is at along this continuum. And then to focus interventions around how to make improvements along that continuum.
Great.
I do think, though, it's important to recognize the difference between elementary and high school, and
In terms of?
grading. I mean, they are fundamentally different. Foundations are being built in elementary school, and then skills are being built once you get to high school on top of those foundations. So,
Well, skills are being taught along with that foundation all through elementary. I mean,
they are.
I think it's inappropriate to use an A, B, C, D, E, F, H, Y, W, D, whatever scale with elementary students. I think it's appropriate to give a narrative and that explains to parents where their areas of deficiency are, so parents can hopefully also intervene with their students at home. I think giving a second grader a B on their ability to read doesn't inform the parents of anything.
Well, I agree. I wasn't suggesting we give ABC to elementary school. I think elementary school even probably needs to be segmented into smaller bits and bytes. My concern is that we are, with having the same scale, CBE scale, for the high school as elementary school, you have this proficient with distinction that is not going to be used in elementary school, at least possibly in 4th and 5th grade, but I haven't seen it. I haven't seen the students given an opportunity to receive a PD. And so that's where I think we really need to look at the grade segments.
Well, if I may, I think that's more of, and this is not disparaging of anybody, but that's more of an instructional approach and an accountability approach, because that same teacher who doesn't give a PD certainly gave A's. And you're telling me that...
I don't think so, because I don't think they started back before we used CBE.
Well, third, 4th, and 5th grade used letters.
I think
K1,
4th and
2
5th.
didn't.
Yeah, 4th and 5th.
But the fact is, you know, if I were to go back and look at K1, 2, 3, who are using the proficiency scale, they were giving out E's for exemplary, which is the highest mark you can get. That's no different than giving out PD. It's a matter of how we determined what lens we used to determine what the E was versus a PD. They weren't looking at it through the lens of indicators and saying, can you meet this or not? There are all these other variables that even I, as a classroom teacher, I gave out A's like candy. And it wasn't always based on how well the kids performed. It was based on how hard they worked. You know, did they come and meet with me before school to go through writing exercises with them? Did they do this? Did they do this? It was not always based on what they know and could do. So competency tries to extrapolate that and keep it content, keep it learning versus habits of work. Well, now I think and this is totally my assumption, but I think after years of doing this for over a decade, when you ask teachers to look at grading differently and take out those extraneous factors and only focus on this learning, they tend to kind of wonder, well, then how can I get kids to the PD and not just proficient? Ben and I are introducing a new tool, and part of that, and we talk it a lot, it's an instructional piece. You know, you can't, and Paige, you and I talked about it before this meeting. If I were to tell you how to solve for X on the board, and then gave you a test on how to solve for X, and gave you 20 problems, and you got all 20 right, are you an A student? Absolutely not, because that's entirely recall. That's entirely, you just took what I showed you to do, recalled those steps, and put it down on a piece of paper.
Right, but if that's the rubric or.
That's not the
thing,
rubric.
Right?
That's not the rubric.
In your example, it was.
That's not the rubric, though, because I'm looking at it through the lens of the indicators, and the indicators ask me to do something else with X. But what I'm saying is it's an instructional piece that we need to start, and Ben and I are introducing this tool called Magic School AI. And what it does, and some of our mentees that Ben and I work with at the elementary level have already started using it. What it does, it allows you to take that same assessment that I just told you about, solving for X, entering that data into an assessment program on the Magic School, and it will take my DOK level 2 assessment and make it a level 4 assessment. So now they're not just solving for X, they're employing higher critical thinking skills to solving for X in an authentic or novel way. Well, now that PD is a no-brainer, because I just raised the DOK level, and if they can perform that level of DOK, they're absolutely a PD. But what we've been doing is we've been functioning for the last year at this DOK level 2, and teachers are finding it hard that if we're only functioning at level 2, how can I give a PD when they're doing the basic understanding? And we're hoping that Ben and I have looked at it, and Mike Smith's looked at it, and Abigail Blaze has looked at it. We really feel strongly that we're going to increase our rigor and expectation by using Magic School. So we gave it to our mentees, and we had our 2 kindergarten teachers at Wheelock, a couple of other elementary teachers took their assessments, a level 2 assessment, put it into the DOK tool on Magic School, and then they had to present their new assessment and what data they got from kids. And they were like, oh my goodness, what I thought was a strong assessment, now I'm asking kids to do this. Now I can give this as an interim assessment. And now here's a new way for kids to take these newly acquired skills and content, and employ them differently, apply them differently. So once they can do that level of rigor on their assessment, we're going to see a lot more PDs than we're used. But we also don't want to just give them out. I think a PD or an A should be pretty darn hard to achieve. I mean, we tell our teachers, and I'm sure Mr. Kate did when he was evaluating teachers all want to be 4s. We give out very few 4s on a teacher evaluation because you dip your toes in a 4. You don't always live in a 4. So you may be a 4 in one particular area, but 3s everywhere else. Why aren't you satisfied with being proficient? Right? That means you are a pretty darn good teacher or student or educator. You're not always going to live in a 4. And I've never seen a teacher evaluation where the teacher got straight 4s. In 25 years as administrator, never seen it. So if that's the case, to be hard to achieve, because the notion is that A's weren't always hard to achieve. If Jen was a good student who came to class prepared every day, worked her tail off, did the extra, I'm going to give Jen an A. Because if Jen's a 92 and the A's a 93, I'm going to say, Jen, do this so you can get 3 extra points. That was nothing about learning. It was never about learning. So we really have to step back and say, this is not a CBE issue. It's largely an instructional issue. And it's not an instructional issue because the teachers aren't good instructionalists. We have fantastic instructionalists. But we have to move from that level 2 kind of understanding of an assessment, jack up the expectation, and then kids are going to be the PDs that we want. We can't just give them out just because the kid always got A's, now they should be always getting PD. Because an A was derived from a different set of contexts than the PD is derived from.
Absolutely. So I'm gonna, if it's okay with you, we've got just a few more things that we need to get through, and it's getting late in the evening. Thank you for that explanation. It's helpful. We are gonna move on to our meeting schedule, 2025-26 Ed Committee meeting schedule. It's the same as it is every year. So we have those 2 months that it switches, which are January and May. Instead of the third Tuesday, it's the second Tuesday. But if this looks good to everybody, then we can, January and May. We go the second week, yes. So do I need a motion to accept this?
So moved.
Okay. Okay, so, all in favor? Okay, then this will be our calendar for next year. And any other business? And I don't think we have any non-public, so that does it for this evening. Thank you all. We are going to adjourn at 7:08 p.m. And thank you all for being here tonight.
Thank you for a good first meeting.
No.
So, when I stayed logged in, this one time, Dylan was, as I was going, I was really scared to go on my downloads, because I went in there, and there was this My Little Pony image, Dylan saw it, and he was like, what the heck is this? And I was like, I'll tell you afterwards. I stayed logged in by accident one day, and Bob Milliken snuck in here to change my
I
background.
changed-
My Little Pony, just an old background, just My Little Pony. And then I opened up one day and I had people in here that saw it, and I was like,
That's
so then I
funny.
changed
That's
it.
wrong. Because we'll swap that one, just like we did this one.
Yeah, it should be made.